Jacksonville has been dealing with serious street violence, and Yungeen Ace is now speaking up about it. He recently shared details about the ongoing conflict between 6 Block and ATK, making it clear that this rivalry is connected to the tragic death of 7-year-old Brian Allen. At first, Brian's death seemed like another heartbreaking case of random gun violence, but now, both Yungeen Ace and the authorities are saying it was actually part of a long-running gang war. Brian Allen Jr. was shot and killed in January in the Commonwealth neighborhood on Jacksonville's west side. Now, police have confirmed that his death is linked to the murder of rapper Charles Jones, better known as Julio Fulio, who was killed last June during his birthday celebration in Tampa. Surveillance footage captured a group of people ambushing Fulio at a Holiday Inn, chasing him down and firing into his car. Now, investigators say this same feud is what led to Brian's tragic passing. So far, 4 people have been arrested for Brian's death, all of whom are connected to 6 Block. They are facing serious charges, just like Yungeen Ace predicted. However, Ace is dealing with his own issues. He is practically banned from Jacksonville, with Sheriff TK Waters publicly stating that he does not want Ace in the city. The sheriff blames him for adding fuel to the fire through his music, especially after releasing his song Who I Smoke. Ace has not directly responded to the ban, but his recent comments about Brian's death suggest that he sees this as a sign that the violence has gone too far. A few months ago, Ace opened up about how ATK was not the same anymore. He felt completely let down by his crew at a time when he needed them the most. He talked about how they were nowhere to be found when it came to financial and emotional support. Funerals had to be paid for, and the community needed help, but the people he thought would stand by him disappeared. To make things worse, he felt like ATK had fallen into the trap of internet culture, where members cared more about chasing clout than standing on real loyalty. In his eyes, this obsession with social media and online attention was the downfall of the crew. Despite all of this, the violence in Jacksonville has not slowed down. In fact, the latest wave of arrests has put 6 Block right back in the spotlight. Authorities have now confirmed that Brian Allen was not even the real target of the attack. The shooters were actually aiming for his cousin, Lafayette Mango Jr., who has connections to ATK. This revelation only added to the already deep-rooted tension between the two groups. For over 10 years, 6 Block and ATK have been locked in this deadly cycle, losing people on both sides. But this is no longer just about street violence. The war has bled into the rap scene, with diss tracks fueling the fire and making everything worse. Music has played a major role in keeping this beef alive. After Julio Fulio was killed, Yungeen Ace wasted no time making music about it. Just hours after Fulio's death, he dropped Do It, and within days, he released Game Over. Both songs openly mocked Fulio's death and his connection to 6 Block. The timing of these releases angered many people in the community. Even though some understood that rap has always had an element of competition and disrespect, this situation felt different. People felt that mocking a man who had just lost his life crossed a line. It is ironic because, in 2021, Fulio had spoken about possibly ending the beef with Ace. He mentioned in an interview that he had talked to Ace before and was open to letting go of the past. But in reality, the tension never truly faded. Diss tracks, online jabs, and street confrontations kept the rivalry alive. And now, with Brian Allen's death, things have only gotten worse. This is what makes the situation in Jacksonville so tragic. The more you look into it, the clearer it becomes that this war is deeply tied to gang life in the city. People like Brian Allen, who had no direct involvement in the core beef, end up paying the price simply because of their association with one side or the other. It is a never-ending cycle of retaliation, disrespect, and loss. Jacksonville has seen too many tragedies because of this feud, but there seems to be no sign of it ending. Every time one side suffers a loss, the other retaliates. Every time a diss track is dropped, it reignites the tension. The community is stuck in this ongoing war, and the consequences are devastating. The arrest of 4 suspects in connection to Brian's murder has once again raised questions about how far this rivalry will go. The men arrested are believed to be members of 6 Block, which means the attack was directly tied to the gang's ongoing feud with ATK. But even with these arrests, there is no guarantee that the violence will stop. If history has shown anything, it is that another act of retaliation is always just around the corner. At this point, many people are wondering if Ace himself could end up in trouble with the law. With his deep ties to ATK and his constant involvement in the drama, it would not be surprising if the authorities started paying even closer attention to him. Law enforcement has already made it clear that they are cracking down on gang-related activity in Jacksonville. If they find any reason to connect Ace to illegal actions, he could easily become their next target. For now, Ace has managed to avoid legal trouble, but that does not mean he is in the clear. The more this beef escalates, the more likely it is that law enforcement will step in. If they decide to go after him, they will not stop until they have something solid to charge him with. This whole situation is heartbreaking. What started as a street rivalry has turned into something much bigger, with music, social media, and personal losses all adding fuel to the fire. The community is suffering, families are being torn apart, and young lives are being lost. And yet, there is no real effort from either side to put an end to the cycle. So, where does it all go from here? That is the question no one seems to have an answer to. The violence could continue, leading to more bloodshed. Or maybe, at some point, someone will step up and try to put an end to it. But as of now, it does not seem like that day is anywhere close. The streets of Jacksonville remain tense, and the war between ATK and 6 Block rages on. A major turning point in this conflict was the murder of Julio Folio last year. He was shot in the parking lot of a Holiday Inn around 4:40 a.m. while celebrating his 26th birthday, which had just passed a few days earlier. The shooters targeted 2 cars, and while Folio lost his life, 3 others were also hit. The situation became even more complicated because Folio had originally been staying at an Airbnb but had to leave due to overcrowding. He had been sharing his birthday plans on social media, even posting Instagram stories about moving the party. His lawyer called the entire attack an ambush, and based on how everything unfolded, that seems to be true. By the end of July 2024, police had arrested 4 people for Folio's murder: Shahjeet, Alicia Andrews, Isaiah Chance Jr., and Rashad Murphy. They were still searching for a 5th suspect, Davin Murphy. Authorities believe Folio's murder was directly connected to the 6 Block and ATK feud. Folio had strong ties to 6 Block, specifically under the KTA set, and made a name for himself by rapping about gang violence and street rivalries in Jacksonville. This cycle of violence continues, and people are now questioning how things reached this point. The streets are filled with tension, and as long as this war between 6 Block and ATK continues, it seems like there is no end in sight. Folio had already survived 2 shootings before, but this time, he did not make it out. After his death, Lafayette Mango Jr. and the ATK crew wasted no time dropping a track called 6 Ways to Die, taking direct shots at 6 Block's fallen members. Instead of cooling things down, the song only added more fuel to the fire. The violence continued just days later when young Brian lost his life, with his cousin barely making it out alive. But 6 Ways to Die was not the only song about Folio's death. Yungeen Ace also jumped into the mix, releasing music just hours after the news broke. Their beef was already intense because of their gang ties, but personal losses over the years made things even worse. Back in 2017, Folio's 17-year-old cousin, Zion Brown, was shot and killed. Not long after, police arrested Yungeen Ace's associate, DeAndre Thomas, for the murder. Zion was the only adult at home that night, with 2 teenagers and 2 young children also inside when the shooting happened. Then, in 2018, things took a darker turn for Ace. His brother, Trayvon Bullard, and 2 close friends were killed in a drive-by shooting. Ace himself was shot 8 times, but somehow survived. That was when the music started to reflect the real-life violence. In 2021, Ace dropped Who I Smoke with Spina Benz, Fast Money Goon, and Wappa Wit Da Choppa. The song dissed Filio's fallen friends, Bibi, Techie, and Lil 9, while sampling 1,000 Miles by Vanessa Carlton, which made it even more controversial. The track gained mainstream attention, but for all the wrong reasons. Filio did not stay quiet. He fired back with When I See You, using real news clips about the death of Ace's brother, and even filming at the graves of Ace's loved ones. It was just as disrespectful, and the feud only got worse from there. By 2023, things had reached a boiling point. Filio accused Ace of snitching after he was seen testifying in court about a fight involving his crew. Filio called him a rat, and both of them kept dropping diss tracks, taking shots at each other's gangs and deceased friends. Then came June 23, 2024. Filio was killed. This was a major turning point in the beef, but Ace did not stop. Just hours after Filio's death, he released Do It, and a few days later, he dropped Game Over. Both songs mocked Filio's death and his connection to 6 Block. The timing of these songs angered many in the community, with people calling it extremely disrespectful. Even though Filio had once mentioned in a 2021 interview that he was open to ending the beef, it never truly stopped. Now, Brian Allen's death has only made things worse. It is just another tragic moment in the ongoing war between Yungeen Ace and Filio's crews. The deeper you look into it, the more you realize how deeply connected this feud is to gang life in Jacksonville. Innocent lives like Brian's get caught in the middle because of all this back and forth. The retaliation, the disrespect, the never-ending cycle, it just keeps going. What started as a street feud has now become something much bigger. The music industry, social media, and public attention have only added more fuel to the fire. Diss tracks have turned into an extension of the streets, and every time one side drops a song disrespecting the other, it increases the chances of more violence. This is not just about music anymore. It is about real lives being lost. Brian was only 7 years old. He had nothing to do with this war, yet he still became a victim of it. The fact that his cousin, Lafayette Mango Jr., was the actual target only shows how reckless and out of control this situation has become. When bullets start flying, they do not always hit their intended target. Families are being destroyed, and children are losing their lives over a feud that should have ended years ago. The city of Jacksonville has been dealing with gang violence for a long time, but the conflict between ATK and 6 Block has pushed things to a different level. The police have been trying to control the situation, but it is not easy when the people involved are making money from the same violence they rap about. Many of these artists know that controversy and drama bring more attention to their music, so instead of backing down, they double down. Every diss track, every music video, and every social media post keeps the cycle going. This beef has been going on for over a decade now, and it is not just about ATK and 6 Block. There are smaller groups involved, people choosing sides, and even those who are not directly part of the gangs getting dragged into the mess. When Filio was killed, some thought it might finally bring an end to the violence, but the truth is, it only made things worse. Instead of peace, it brought more anger, more revenge, and more bloodshed. One of the biggest problems is that the younger generation is watching all of this unfold. Kids who look up to these rappers see the way they handle conflict, and they think that is how things should be done. They see beef turning into music, music turning into money, and money turning into power. It creates a dangerous cycle where the streets and the rap game become one and the same. At this point, the big question is, how does it all end? Right now, there is no sign that things will slow down. Even after Filio's death, Ace has kept dropping diss tracks, and his rivals are not staying quiet either. The back and forth continues, and as long as there is attention and money to be made from the drama, it will keep going. What started as a personal feud between two men has now turned into something much bigger. It is no longer just about Ace and Filio. It has spread across the streets, involving their crews, their fans, and even law enforcement. The deeper this conflict goes, the harder it becomes to stop. Each new diss song, each act of retaliation, and each tragedy only fuels the cycle even more. The internet has played a huge role in keeping this beef alive, as fans continue to pick sides, spread rumors, and celebrate the violence. It is a never-ending battle with no clear way out. The sad reality is that situations like this usually only end in two ways: either more lives are lost, or the authorities step in with major arrests. And when it comes to law enforcement, Yungeen Ace could definitely find himself in serious trouble. He is deeply connected to everything happening: the music, the beef, the gang activity. Law enforcement has been paying close attention, and if they find solid proof linking him to any illegal actions, he could be facing serious consequences. Whether it is through his lyrics, his past actions, or his known connections, it would not be surprising if the feds try to build a case against him. Right now, he is still walking free, but that does not mean he is in the clear. The more this war continues, the higher the chances that someone in his circle could get arrested and start talking. One wrong move, one mistake, and Ace could find himself facing charges. This is far from over, and if things keep escalating, it is only a matter of time before someone else ends up behind bars or worse. Law enforcement in Jacksonville has already been cracking down on gang activity, and with the level of violence happening, it would not be surprising if Ace or other big names in this feud end up behind bars. The police do not need proof of him pulling the trigger to charge him with something. If they find enough connections between his music, his actions, and the crimes happening in the city, they can still build a case against him. For now, everyone is watching and waiting. The streets are tense, and people know that things could explode at any moment. Every time a new song drops, every time a disrespectful post is made online, the tension grows. More families could lose their loved ones. More lives could be ruined. And at the end of it all, the only ones who win are the record labels making money from the chaos. It is a tragic situation, and at this point, it looks like it will only end in more bloodshed or someone doing serious time. But what do you think about Yungeen Ace speaking on this Jacksonville tragedy? Was he right to talk about it, or is he just keeping the cycle going? Even though people involved are trying to stay low, it is clear who is behind the violence. The big question now is, how does this end? Right now, it does not look like it is slowing down. Ace is still releasing diss tracks even after Fulio's death, keeping the fire burning. This is not just about rap, it is about deep-rooted gang politics. Unless something major happens to stop it, the violence will continue. Either more people will get hurt or someone will end up behind bars. And speaking of that, could Yungeen Ace end up in jail? Absolutely. The more this war plays out, the more attention it will get from law enforcement. He is tied to all of this: the music, the violence, the gang connections. The feds are watching, and if they find anything on him, whether it is linked to shootings or other illegal activities, he could easily face serious charges. Right now, he might be staying under the radar, but this is far from over. It would not be surprising if he is the next one the law comes after. It is a tragic situation, and at this point, it looks like it will only end in more bloodshed or someone doing serious time. But what do you think about Yungeen Ace speaking on this Jacksonville tragedy? Was he right to talk about it, or is he just keeping the cycle going?